If Jewish history is a river, I used to feel like I was sitting by its peaceful banks. I marveled at its ceaseless flow, sometimes gentle, sometimes perilous. I studied it, I admired it, and I found consolation and inspiration in watching its flow. If Jewish history is a river, last year on October 7th, I fell in. We know the stories from history about when Jews were never fully safe, when they were murdered for being Jews. But for me, at least, studying these stories was always an intellectual exercise. It was never a lived experience. These stories were like old black and white photographs on exhibit in a museum, pictures with the ability to tug at my heartstrings, but that were, at the end of the day, images of them and not of us. Before October 7th, I had naively believed that what happened then could stay safely stored in history. But as the late Columbia professor of Jewish history, Yosef Chaim Yerushalmi, taught, Jews don't have only history. We are a people of memory. More than recounting historical events, we elevate them into sacred rituals of remembrance, like the Passover Seder, which through memory draws the narrative into our present, enabling us to engage with and mold our moral compass as if we were still bound in Egypt's chains. Maybe I should have known better than to think I could be a Jew on the riverbank. But the picture is now clear, clearer than in the aftermath of the marches in Charlottesville, sharper than in the wake of the tragedies in Pittsburgh. On October 7th, Jewish memory surged forth violently. In the aftermath of that dark day, we watched as in response to the attacks, there arose a whirlwind of Jew hate across the world. Now, to be sure, there were some who were sympathetic, but we saw marches and rallies against Israel that were organized in Times Square, students and faculty at top universities issuing declarations denouncing the genocidal, colonizing Jewish state, blaming Israel for the violence it had just experienced. People carried signs that said, "Go back to Poland." And then as body parts of innocent Jews and non-Jews of all ages were still being collected from beds and from fields, while the dead and the missing were still being counted, we watched how rallies and proclamations inverted the blame, rationalized the horror, and glorified the perpetrators. The vitriol expressed was not a reaction to the contentious politics of Prime Minister Netanyahu, nor to his alliances with fanatical zealots who, in the words of Bernard-Henri Lévy, have clearly lost their Jewish compass. No. This reaction to the Hamas atrocity was an attack on the very existence of the state of Israel and on every Jew who seeks to live. We were reminded what happened once upon a time happens all of the time. In reaction, we, the people of the book, did what came naturally. We looked for historical parallels to help us find our footing amid the chaos. We reached to explain what so violently stretched our cognitive limits. A pogrom, people said, like in Kishinev in 1903, or the worst attack against Jews since the Holocaust, or Hamas's Amalek. But there was a problem with these parallels. The massacre didn't take place during the time of the Bible. It didn't take place in Germany or in Poland or in the Russian Empire. the massacre took place in the land of Israel, challenging a primary reason for returning to the birthplace of the Jewish people. Remember, the hope of Israel was that the poor, oppressed, powerless Jew would be transformed into a new kind of Jew, a Jew with a home, a Jew who could protect herself. What we sought, in the words of Israel's Declaration of Independence, we sought to be masters of our own fates, like all other nations. We got rid of victimization. We chose life. Zionism was a new tributary, or at least a way to redirect the current of Jewish memory. America, too, embodied fresh new waters. We recognize that this land aspired to be free, that although always a work in progress, this nation was fundamentally different from the places we had fled. As George Washington promised, here we would give to bigotry no sanction. We believe that this was our golden Abedina, our golden lands, a refuge from the old struggles we knew all too well. But that, too, was a perspective from the peaceful banks of the river. The peaceful banks of the river where we sat and wept in joy and celebrated America, the new Zion. The peaceful banks of the river where previous generations built synagogues and Jewish summer camps and federations, all at a safe distance from the river. They were trying to protect themselves and us with the assurance that memory, especially of trauma, would not linger in the shadows of the future. But Jewish memory is not merely a collection of black and white photographs to be scrutinized from afar. We swim alongside our ancestors. Today, fully immersed in the river of Jewish memory, we find ourselves at a somber turning point. Beneath our heartfelt greetings of Shana Tova, we carry fear, we carry frustration, we carry shame, we carry anger. For as swords turn to rocket launchers and spears to guns, we are left to grapple with a shared sorrow for the state of our world. Now, for some, this fear and despair causes some at least to say that the golden age of American Judaism is over. These people gaze upon the turbulent waters and knowingly or not echo the voices of those 10 biblical spies who scout the promised land and return to the Israelites with despair. They look to the American Jewish future and they paint a picture of hopelessness, urging us to focus on what threatens to pull us under. And there is a lot that is threatening to pull our community under. But if we're ever to move forward, we cannot build a Judaism rooted in fear. The hard part, at least one of the hard parts, is, and then I'm going to quote Amos Oz, as the questions grow harder and more complicated, people yearn for simple answers, one-sentence answers, answers that point unhesitatingly to a culprit who can be blamed for all our suffering, answers that promise that if only we eradicate the villains, all troubles will all of a sudden vanish. End quote. Thank you, Amos Oz. And so this year, the cries of the shofar, like the crying of all who suffer, and there are so many, they call us to navigate these tempestuous waters and face the reality that there is no simple one-sentence answer. Today, I believe it is our responsibility to ask, as our ancestors did before us, how is it that we are going to be able to stay afloat? How can we construct homes? How can we cultivate gardens that draw sustenance from the river's depths? One possibility that I'd like to put forward this evening is that we reimagine American Jewish life, and we start with the synagogue. I believe that our houses of prayer, our houses of learning, if lifted from complacency and mediocrity, can be this vital lifeline of hope, a life jacket of sorts, one we will need as we strive to move this world along. For the American synagogue holds within its grasp the ability to steady us and keep us afloat. I know this because I've seen it. I've seen it right here with all of you. The way that prayer can touch our souls, the way that learning can help us understand the world and our place in it, and the way a deep and honest connection to Israel can strengthen our sense of Jewish peoplehood and our own humanity. So prayer, learning, Israel. Regarding prayer, I've thought all year about those Friday nights in October last year when we came together in our lobby, our eyes spent with tears, our hearts in tumult over the ruin of our people. We brought light into our midst by lighting Shabbat candles. We reached for comfort from the durable rituals that have always served to root us. Those gatherings were so raw, and they felt at the time so necessary. But the intrinsic power of communal prayer must not be felt just in response to catastrophe. In this age of loneliness, in this age where much of our lives are mediated through machines, where so much of what we do is for the purpose of gain or glory, I'm questioning how we might learn to take prayer seriously and recognize prayer as an act of discovery. How can we build a prayer life that fosters connections with others, including those with whom we may disagree? Can prayer do this? I do pray that our sanctuary is big enough to hold our questions, our struggles, and our differences, so that we might sing Shema in one voice. Along with prayer, a synagogue is a place of learning. When we gather, it should be to cultivate thoughtful engagement with ideas. That means putting education ahead of advocacy, especially here in Washington, where there are more than enough platforms crowding the public square. We can distinguish ourselves. What other Jewish space holds the book of books, the Torah, a symbol for our people's quest for wisdom and meaning? We can cultivate an environment for engaging with big ideas and deepening our experience of being human. And to apply what one of our congregants has argued is the main purpose of education, we can use our incredible literature to focus not so much on what to think, but on how to think. Like Micah, our prophet, we might humble ourselves and view learning as a chance not only to affirm our deepest values, but as a chance to open ourselves to the richness of new perspectives. This is a challenge. And finally, to our house of prayer and our house of study, we add the flag of Israel, because we cannot abandon the Zionist project. Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, the Jewish story flows from Zion. We cannot abandon the millions of Jews who, on that small patch of earth, found in Israel a refuge when the rest of the world closed its doors. There, they have built a vibrant culture, a mosaic of creativity and resilience, where the echoes of our ancient traditions harmonize with the pulse of modern life. It is an old new lands, a lands where the spirit of tikva, of hope, somehow endures. I saw this with my own eyes, the spirit of tikva, of hope. This year, on the streets of Tel Aviv, I saw this spirit in the throngs of young people crowding the cafes, persisting in their perpetual struggle to thrive. Their story is our story, and they have never had the luxury of resting on the banks of our shared river. Because history had our ancestors come here and theirs there. As we think about Israel, I think about Buber and other early Zionists who were well aware that we are not the sole inhabitants of this land. And I think to fail to recognize this is to live in an alternative reality. Again, Amos Oz. If someone from either side of the Israeli-Palestinian divide comes along and says, "This is my land," he is right. But if someone says, "This land from the Mediterranean Sea to the Jordan River is all mine and only mine," then he is out for blood. And herein lies yet another challenge as we think about our relationship with Israel. We are witnessing right now a Zionist project that is tainted by those out for blood. Religious fanatics who burn Palestinian olive groves, who incite violence, and who celebrate what to any moral human being should be seen as detestable, who celebrate Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank dead, wounded, distressed, uprooted. This is nothing to be celebrated. This is shameful. The rabbis taught us, make for yourself a heart of many rooms. This is our moral obligation. For this is not a competition of sorrow. All year, I've been inspired by the courageous Rachel Goldberg-Pollen, mother of Hirsch. Hirsch, who endured 11 months in captivity without an arm before being executed by Hamas. Rachel Imenu, Rachel, our mother. She is a hero. She is courageous. She showed us the way by talking about all of humanity, how the hostages are something that we should all care about just as human beings. She seemed to rise above the fray. She said it best when she said, when you only get outraged when one side's babies are being killed, then your moral compass is broken and your humanity is broken. The Jewish tradition and Zionism has long found strength in the coexistence of diverse perspectives. This is so much ingrained in the Jewish story. And it is this richness of diversity that allows us and can allow us to truly understand our worlds. Elu ve'elu divrei Elohim chayim, these and those are the words of the living God. Maybe these are the new words that need to be written on top of every synagogue so that we might learn to listen to each other somehow. I don't know if there's a bottom line as I talk about adding this flag of Israel to our synagogue. But if there's a bottom line, it's this. Amidst the complexity, amidst the conflicting truths, all Jewish faiths are intertwined. We are not merely a religion. We are an Am. We are a people bound together in a shared destiny, a shared river. This is our gift and our burden. And as we think about the flag of Israel, I want us to understand that our fate is irrevocably linked to that of the Palestinian people and to all of humanity. As I've learned from reading Theodor Herzl, the Zionist project was not a project just for the Jews. The Zionist project was a project for the world. That's what Herzl believed. So we must not turn inward. We must not look away. I love these words from Joshua Leifer, who says, "The ethical task of global Jewish life is now to make the modern experiment in Jewish sovereignty a just one." Temple Micah, we are bound to the currents of our past. The world sadly has made that much clear. But as we look ahead to 5785, what I hope will give us hope, even as it's hard to find, is that within the rough currents of Jewish memory lie the life-sustaining waters of the Garden of Eden, which, as the rabbis taught, flow toward a renewed existence, from creation to redemption. This is our journey. But we'll need a sanctuary, a haven brimming with prayer, study, and an unyielding commitment to Israel. A sanctuary where Jewish memory illuminates and enriches our path forward. In this new year, may we rise with resolve, with strength, with courage, and with hope. Shana Tova.